Anyone else feel like this when trying to sign up for the vaccine?
You got to go up over curbs and around fences and then through this maze before you can get your appointment.
Yeah, it's pretty complicated, but our job is to make things easier. So we're going to break down exactly how and where you can get your shot right now. And remember that big tax we passed to fund homeless services in the metro area? Let's check in on that, especially with all the talk now about expanding homeless camps throughout the city. And you may remember back in January, the Portland Police Union president told us this.
We're going to come up with more ways to show our transparency and accountability.
And right now would be a good time for a little of both, considering he just resigned over some involvement he had with the false Jo Ann Hardesty hit-and-run story. Here's the story.
People keep asking me, so where's the green? Why aren't you wearing green today? First of all, it's in my blood. How dare you? Second, I did forget, actually. There's a lot going on. I can't remember every holiday, for crying out loud. I'm Dan Haggerty. Hi, welcome to The Story. If you know anything about this show, then you know how important you are to what we do here. If you don't know anything about this show, then what I just said. So tell me what's on your mind. What should we cover? What do you think we should cover? Can you critique anything we've done so far? Some people aren't really happy with all the stuff we say on this show. If you are one of those people, let me know. Let me hear it on Facebook, Instagram. You can email us at thestory@kgw.com or use Twitter in the hashtag HeyDan. In the meantime, let's talk big story, shall we? So I'm going to talk to younger viewers are going to go, huh, what are you talking about? Everybody else, you'll know what I mean. Do you remember going to the video store back in the day on a Friday night, like a Blockbuster or something? You'd go into the back on the wall. There'd be 4 or 5 different new releases. You'd pick one that you haven't seen and you head on home. You were in, you were out. Well, then Netflix came along, and now you got thousands of options. Nothing is ever sold out, and somehow you spend more time trying to figure out what to watch than actually watching something. You see, sometimes having more options can actually make things more complicated, like trying to sign up for a vaccine. There are dozens of ways to sign up in Oregon and Washington, and pretty soon all of you are going to be scrolling through the options. And by pretty soon, I mean pretty soon, May. This afternoon, we learned that every single adult in Oregon will be eligible for a vaccine on May 1, May 1st. Now, it doesn't mean you're going to get a shot on that day, but you will be eligible, which means you'll need to get an appointment. Kristen Severance explains how both states have sort of this patchwork system of signing up instead of one centralized site, and that can lead to problems.
Based on all of your emails, once you make it to a mass vaccination site like the convention center, it's a pretty smooth process. You get in, you get your shot, and you leave. But finding those appointments still seems to be an issue. Mary emailed us saying there are far too many seniors struggling to find an appointment. Keep sharing resources and tips on how to find an appointment. Telling seniors who've already waited so long to be patient is infuriating.
Because my first appointment was somebody younger than me getting through the system a whole lot faster.
Mary Johnson spends a lot of time on the Nextdoor app, trying to help other people sign up to get their shot too.
So that lack of centralization of knowledge and information is really missing.
She's right. There isn't really a central website listing out all the places to find a vaccine appointment in Oregon or Washington. So we compiled a list for you. Stick with me. There are a lot of different ways to sign up. People in Multnomah, Clackamas, Washington, and Columbia counties can get the vaccine at the Mass Vaccination Clinic at the Oregon Convention Center. You sign up by using the Get Vaccinated Oregon tool. Once you sign up, you'll be sent an invitation when a vaccine is available. Important, the invitation expires in 5 days. Names are selected at random each week from the eligible pool. Once selected, you'll go to the Oregon Convention Center for your shot. If you're a senior with mobility needs or a person with disabilities, you can go to the drive-through clinics at PDX Airport or Hillsborough Stadium. Sign up by using the OHSU COVID vaccine tool. Appointments open Monday and Thursday mornings at 9. Now for the pharmacies. Safeway, Albertsons, Walmart, Costco, Fred Meyer, Walgreens, Bi-Mart, Health Mart independent pharmacies are all scheduling vaccine appointments for eligible people. There are multiple ways to get the vaccine in Marion and Polk counties. Important to note, Salem Health has opened the mass vaccination site at the state fairgrounds to all eligible residents, not just people who live in Marion County. Sign up by using the Salem Health tool. These health centers in Oregon are also vaccinating people in underserved communities. They will contact people who qualify. Let's go to Washington State. They have a vaccine finder tool to schedule an appointment. Simply select your county and all nearby available vaccines will be listed. Washington residents can also sign up through a pharmacy or schedule an appointment at the Clark County Fairgrounds or Cowlitz County Event Center. I told you, there are a lot of different ways to get the vaccine. Is this a good or bad thing? I asked logistics expert at Oregon State University, Joseph Agor.
Having multiple options of where to sign up, I don't believe that's a bad thing.
He said it is challenging when trying to figure out the best way to distribute the vaccine.
Where is the demand taking place, and how do we allocate and distribute appropriately so that we don't over-allocate to one area and over-allocate to another area? That can make it sometimes challenging because when we have multiple sources of data, it's hard to actually combine that data to make it useful.
Logistics experts say most states have this sort of patchwork system instead of opting for a one-stop pre-registration system like at the Oregon Convention Center. Pre-registration systems take more work to implement. The patchwork system puts the bulk of the work on the public, leading to a lot of complaints, but less work for state governments. Ting-Long Dai is an expert in healthcare operations and vaccine supply chains at Johns Hopkins University. He says the more chaotic the sign-up process, the more likely people may stop trying.
People have tried, 20 times, 30 times, 100 times. There's a point people will say, I give up. And that's when we're in trouble.
All the information in one place.
As for Mary, she hopes people keep trying, no matter how frustrating the system may be.
It's like saying, here's a system, but we're not going to put any ramps for you to get in. You got to go up over curbs and around fences and then through this maze before you can get your appointment.
I know we just threw a lot of information at you, so my best advice is just go to our website. This is the home page. You want to click here, getting the vaccine, and this is going to bring up that article that we just showed you. And then you can go through chapter by chapter on how to schedule. Chapter 1 is the Portland metro area. Chapter 2 is going to list out all the pharmacies. Bookmark this or favorite this. That way, when you become eligible, you can go ahead and schedule right away. Dan?
Good advice, Kristen. Thank you. But, look, the vaccine rollout has seemed slow to a lot of you, excruciatingly slow to some people at some times. And it's frustrating. And we've heard from so many of you when you see a group of people that kind of goes ahead of you or jumps ahead of you in line. But there could be a bit of good news on that front. Now, as I mentioned before, Oregon's Health Authority Director announced today that all adults will be able to sign up for a vaccine by May 1st. It's still, it's not right. It's not tomorrow. It's 6 weeks away still, but it is a light at the end of the tunnel, as the news loves to say. Along with that, though, we found out that some groups may be bumped up. All right, the Oregon Health Authority told us today that they're discussing it in the next few weeks. So again, no plans have been finalized yet. It all depends on supply, but essential workers and other vulnerable groups may be able to get their shots sooner. Now, Washington actually just opened up the vaccine availability today to a new group that includes grocery store workers, people who are pregnant, and people with disabilities that put them at a higher risk for COVID. So if you're a grocery store worker, or you know a grocery store worker, or you have been to a grocery store, you know how relieving this news is for the people in Washington, because grocery stores have not been the most relaxing place to spend a pandemic. You come in contact with a lot of people, and for some reason, anti-maskers see the produce aisle as the perfect podium to take a stand against tyranny and science, as explained by Howard Ross, a worker from the Fred Meyer in Hazel Dell.
We see a lot with them. You get a lot that say I'm not wearing it because they say this is a fake disease, and then you get the people who get mad at them a lot for not having it. So it can be interesting when you're in there seeing it. Oh yes.
You're ready for that part to be over?
Yes. It's got quite hostile sometimes. Yeah.
So congrats to Howard in Washington and his co-workers and his friends at the Fred Meyer and Hazel Dell. Though I am betting there are a bunch of people kind of tying their aprons on right now down at the Panera Bread next door watching this and saying, so you argue with people about masks. That must be nice. Where I work, most people don't even wear them. So where's my vaccine? You see, restaurant workers were left off the list in Washington, and they're not exactly thrilled about it.
We are at risk. Whether we want to be here or not, most of us live paycheck to paycheck, and it's very important for us to be able to make a livelihood, and for our Governor Inslee to go ahead and once again inhibit our ability to make a thriving economy, to make the community thrive. I believe it's just a disservice for all of us.
That guy didn't work at Panera, but you get my point. Now, it's important to know all of these vaccine schedules change a lot. They're fluid, and they'll be changing who's going to get them and when they're going to get them and when they're all going to be available. And it all hinges on what the federal government says and how many vaccine doses they send to Washington and Oregon. Now, Washington State actually moved this current phase ahead by 5 days. So, as you can see, things are changing pretty quickly, and we're going to keep checking and let you know how those dates shift in the future so you can get your vaccine. All right, hey, let's do our daily vaccine count right now. Let's check in. As of this afternoon, more than 877,000 people here in the state of Oregon have gotten at least their first dose. About 3/4 of those people have gotten their second dose, but that number counts the people with that first shot. And this puts us at just about 20%, over 20% actually, of the state's population with that first dose. In Washington, more than 1.5 million have gotten at least their first dose of the vaccine, which works out to be about 20.7% of Washington's population, pretty much on par right now with Oregon. Question for you, really quickly. What is more alarming, an emergency or the moment that you realize the emergency has become so constant that it's just your normal life now? We have been in a housing emergency in Portland for the better half of a decade. And I'm not just speaking figuratively. We have been in a literal emergency. I mean, City Council declared that in 2015. When they did that, it automatically loosened certain city codes to make it easier for shelters to pop up, or for organized camps to be built, or for people to stay off the streets by living in tiny homes or in an RV on a friend's property. Cities usually crack down on that sort of thing, but because of the emergency, Portland made exceptions. It was supposed to help. It was supposed to help us start to fix this problem, but it didn't. Homelessness barely noticed. Now, Council is considering a proposal to keep those loosened codes in place permanently, making the emergency codes just plain old codes. Today, they took some public comment on this idea, and it was pretty one-sided. About 100 people signed up, which is a lot. Overwhelmingly, people did not like the idea. Then again, I doubt a lot of homeless people fired up their MacBooks to weigh in. Now, the concerns are vast. They're widespread. One of the flashpoints, though, is kind of around our parks. Now, if approved, it would allow nonprofits and agencies to set up organized camps similar to the Kenton Women's Village, and they could pop up at any park or any open space zone in the city for a maximum of 180 days. Now, my inbox is full of messages from people who don't like this, from people who are downright angry about it. They're worried. They're worried about crime and drugs and sanitation in the parks where they bring their kids or they go for a jog. You know the arguments. I mean, you've heard them 1,000 times. They're the same ones that we've heard since the beginning of this, quote, emergency. But to me, it's a little more than that. It's another example of how, instead of our ideas changing the homeless crisis, we're the ones being changed by it, despite everything we throw at it, even emergency measures. I mean, emergency measures are supposed to be temporary. When you call the fire department to come to your home, you expect them to put out the fire and leave, not build a substation in your driveway. But homelessness has proven once again to be a runaway train. And I understand if you're nervous or if you're upset at the thought of those tracks running through your neighborhood, but don't pretend you can't hear the whistle. The crisis is real. It's heading your way, and so far, it's winning. But there's hope. Once again, there is promised hope. We just passed this landmark homelessness tax that will pump $250 million a year into this battle. By April, they're going to start collecting the money. By summertime, they're going to start spending it. I want to learn a lot more about what they plan to do with this money, how they plan to use it. I hope you do too.
If you do, let me know. We're going to start working on those stories now. Use the hashtag #HeyDan. All right, let's check in on what's going on in Corvallis, because it's been a pretty contentious afternoon.
We demand you finally take action, as if it is your own daughters attending this university.
So, the OSU Board of Trustees, they're deciding whether or not to fire the university's president over that sexual misconduct scandal at his previous job. We've got an update when the story continues. Welcome back. Keep sending in those questions and comments to the story at kgw.com. You can also use that hashtag #HeyDan on Twitter, and we're on Instagram. Not sure if you knew that, but you can follow us at the story KGW. We don't normally do this here on the story, but we're going to be coming to you now with a little bit of breaking news. Do we have the no stinger? Nothing. It's not even. It's semi-breaking news, if you will. Anyway, Oregon State University's Board of Trustees has so far today spent nearly 6 hours and counting talking about whether they should discipline or straight up fire their new president, F. King Alexander. He's facing a lot of backlash about a recent investigation that found Louisiana State University mishandled years' worth of claims of sexual assault and misconduct, including at the hands of former head football coach Les Miles. You might be wondering, well, how does Alexander fit into this? Well, it ties in because Alexander was the president at LSU before coming to Oregon State last summer. He has since said that he regrets not taking stronger action against Miles, and he repeatedly said he has the utmost sympathy for the survivors of sexual violence, and he'll work to protect them. That's if he gets to stay on the job at Oregon State. Students there are pretty upset about this report. Staff are upset, and the board is scrambling here, and the stakes are really high. So high, we told Maggie Vespa we actually need her live tonight for an update. So Maggie, this meeting is still going on. What is the headline right now? Do we have any type of decision or know where they're headed?
Dan, so the headline is we don't have a decision at this point. This meeting started at 12:30. As you said, it's been going on close to 6 hours at this point. And at this point, OSU's Board of Trustees is still in an executive session. Reporters are allowed to listen in on that, but we can't give you details per state law of what they're talking about. After this session wraps, which could be any time, they'll jump back into the public meeting and then basically discuss in front of the public what they want to do and make any decisions that they're inclined to make tonight. But yeah, it's still going at this point. I will show you some video now just of the meeting throughout the day. It's been really an emotional meeting. More than 100 members of the public, mostly students and staff, submitted written testimony. 19 people actually spoke to the Board of Trustees, and the consensus from those who spoke was that OSU should have known about the investigation into LSU, Louisiana State, and they shouldn't have hired Alexander. That investigation, released a couple of weeks ago, alleged that LSU had an underfunded Title IX office. It alleged that top athletes accused of assault were protected, and it alleged that then head football coach Les Miles kept his job for years after female students accused him of sexual misconduct. So here's some of what we heard from students and staff today. And to note, you'll hear their voices, but you won't see their faces.
Survivors are here at this university to learn, not to educate you or people who abuse us, or bodies like you that uphold the systems that protect those abusers. We demand you finally take action, as if it is your own daughters attending this university, risking their lives and safety on this campus. And if you're not fit for the job, I suggest all of you get the hell out of here. You have work to do, and you better start now.
This is the most vile and preventable scandal that OSU has had during my time here, at least that I can recall. When we talk about openness, the board chose a process that kept candidates safe instead of choosing a process to keep employees, students, and the community safe by being open and transparent. There is no...
All right, so that was a big complaint. Dan, you might have heard that they talked about the process. OSU had a closed hiring process when bringing Alexander on board, meaning that no one heard who the other candidates for president of the university were, and they only announced who got the job. And multiple people brought that up, saying in going forward and this time around, they wanted a more transparent process, and maybe even to be able to weigh in on who the school brought on board as president.
Now, once this all came to light, we've heard from Alexander,
a few times before, and he said that he has absolute empathy for survivors and that he acknowledges that he could have done some things better at LSU, especially when it comes to Les Miles. What did he say today? Did he speak today? What did he have to say?
Sure. So he repeated a lot of that, and you'll hear from him in a second. He also, I want to note, clarified his answer basically about what OSU knew about this process and about the investigations as they were interviewing him. So Alexander has said that conversations were had about this investigation. Well, today, he said those conversations were actually more limited to Title IX in general and the opening of offices, Title IX offices at LSU. The most explosive claims in this investigation, he noted, did not come up in the interview process. And the Board of Trustees said they didn't find out about this interview until the report came out earlier this month, when all of this kind of came to a head. So all that in mind, here's a moment from today's public hearing where former OSU basketball star Lamar Hurd, who's on the Board of Trustees, asked Alexander about trust.
How can, and if you think it's possible for a leader in your position to be able to lead people that are fearful of what their experience might be moving forward? And that's in addition to the people who have expressed, like those earlier today in public comment, what their experience has been, because we can't have that.
It's my number one responsibility is campus safety, and I think we work to educate those parents, that father, that mother, that this is a safe place, and it's going to be more safe because we're going to improve upon where we are now. I can always get better. I can always add more. I can do things that have the most impact for our students.
So again, that was F. King Alexander, current president of OSU, kind of answering questions and in some cases defending himself to the Board of Trustees at the university. Those trustees are in an executive session right now. They'll jump back into the public session, and that is where, if a decision is going to be made tonight, which we do expect one, but that could change, that's where that would happen in front of the public. Dan, so we'll stay on it obviously and have updates online, but it has been quite an intense day.
I'll be watching your Twitter feed, Maggie. Quite the delay. I think she got my point, though. Maybe you should follow her Twitter feed, too. I'm sure as soon as there's an update, she'll let us know about it. Now, look, yesterday was kind of a crazy news day, all right? There was a lot of stuff going on around here. I don't blame if you missed this next story. The president of the Portland Police Union resigned, all right? He stepped down. Here's the explanation that the union gave us about this. They said, we learned that Portland Police Association President Brian Hunsaker made a serious, isolated mistake related to the Police Bureau's investigation into the alleged hit and run by Commissioner Jo Ann Hardesty. Now, they didn't explain what that, quote, mistake was. Now, I know you remember this story. All right, earlier this month, Commissioner Hardesty was falsely named in a police report about a hit and run by the driver of the car that was hit. Turns out it was not Hardesty, and police completely cleared her of any involvement, but not before right-wing Facebook groups somehow got their hands on the report and started spreading that misinformation online. So today, we reached out to Hardesty to see if she had anything to say about the union president quitting. She told us she really doesn't know anything about the whole situation other than what we have reported, but we did ask her what she wants to see happen now that Hunsaker has resigned.
I hope that the due diligence, the investigation actually uncovers what the mistake was, and that we, the public, and myself included, get to know specifically what he did and why he did it, and then be held accountable for his behavior.
Okay, so pretty to the point right there. And it is worth noting that Hunsaker is still employed by the Portland Police Bureau. His resignation from his union job didn't affect his job with the Bureau. Now, he was only president, actually, of the Police Association for a couple of months. He took over during this huge conversation the city and really the entire country has been having about police accountability. And of course, after months and months of protests. Here's what he told us about his plans back in January.
My goal in my capacity as president of the association is to look forward to the future, to understand what the community needs, but we follow procedure, we follow law, and we want to do things appropriately. When we do things appropriately, because that's what we are sworn to do, we also are encouraged by accountability. Accountability starts with the police. We understand that. We will be accountable, we are accountable, and we're going to come up with more ways to show our transparency and accountability.
Okay, let's talk about it. Let's start with accountability. You can see he's holding himself accountable, it appears here, for whatever sort of involvement he had in this Hardesty case by stepping down. But that other part about the transparency, that's still kind of an issue because we don't know what he did, what mistake he made. We've asked the police association, but they won't tell us. The mayor, who also serves as the police commissioner, says he hasn't been told either. And in fact, he's actually demanding to know what Hunsaker did. We can speculate. A lot of people are speculating, but maybe you're doing it right now in your head or to the person sitting next to you on the couch. But that's just kind of more fuel for the misinformation fire, which no one needs to do right now. So we're going to keep asking the questions and hopefully soon get some answers. All right, keep sending in your thoughts, your questions, whatever's on your mind. We're going to finish this story. Maybe I'll read one of your comments or something like that right after the break. We'll see you then. Jennifer said, hey, Dan, that awkward silence with you and Maggie Vespa staring into each other's eyes was hilarious. Yeah, she was live tonight, so we had to do a little live thing. She's from her living room. It's kind of tough to kind of balance those things out, but don't try a staring contest with Maggie Vespa. You will lose every time. We don't have a lot of time because Maggie had a big report tonight, so we're kind of out of it right now, but time, that is, and our minds. We'll see you tomorrow.